Oh, just the seat go fast. Good morning and happy hump day, folks. So I'm going to make this quick because this is a video I've been meaning to do for a while. And given the timing of things in which I'll explain in a minute, I'll tell you what it is. So my low is that yesterday kind of dragged on a little bit. That was kind of a long day. My high was I got to see my parents and my nephews yesterday. And my act of kindness was I emptied the dehumidifier and took out my parents' garbage. Which I always do every Tuesday, because today's gonna be garbage day. So, for those of you who don't already know, in just over a week from now, I will be heading back to Trinity-Pawling for my 15-year reunion. And for those of you who've been watching me for a very long time, you know that I have a series of videos on here I do every now and again called TP Tales. TP stands for Trinity-Pawling, and Tales is obviously stories of, when I was there. For the most part, every TP tale I've ever talked about, there's always been something good behind it. There's been, I talked about how they were rebuilding the dining hall. So for the first part of the year, we had to have our meals in the hockey rink, and then we had to have them in a barn. I talked about the classes I've had there. I talked about the plays and choir concerts I had there. And every year, even though technically these aren't TP tales, I talk about how Trinity-Pawling did save my life in regards to back then I was contemplating suicide, and Trinity-Pawling saved my life. But if you want to know the story, don't worry. I do that story. I tell that story every year in December, so be patient. It's coming. Or you can always look at the videos I do every December. Well, actually, the last couple of years it's been December 13th, but every December 14th is the real meat and potatoes of it. What happened to save me from contemplating suicide. Anyway, for the most part, every story I've had has been pretty good. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were definitely some hard times. Even made worse when there are people who genuinely make it so. Now, I would genuinely tell you that, including faculty, you probably had about, we'll round up to 400 people there. Students and faculty, we'll say 400 people. That's a pretty, I'm sure it's definitely less than that, but we'll say, for the sake of rounding up, we'll say 400 people. In my entire time at Trinity-Pawling, there were 3 people who genuinely made me very, very upset. Thankfully, one of them I actually did forgive back in 2019. So that just leaves 2 now. 1 teacher and 1 student. And today I plan on talking about the former. Because in a lot of ways, while this teacher, and I will talk about again more on this in December, by all accounts, this teacher was probably objectively the worst teacher I ever had. By far. Even though a certain group of faculty members I'll be talking about in December are objectively, in my opinion, worse. But if those faculty I talk about in December are even included as faculty, this guy is easily the worst teacher I ever had. Yes, this was a guy. Now, the way Trinity-Pawling worked was, whatever your class schedule was, for the most part, those were your teachers for the entire year. And the way it also worked is, unlike, say, at Horseheads, where you have 2 semesters, Trinity-Pawling had 3 trimesters, fall, winter, and spring. There was one particular class I had, which fulfilled the history requirement that I needed to do. That wasn't made an official name, but people called it the Asian Trilogy. Because in each of the trimesters, it was a different subject matter. In the fall, it was Asian history. In the winter, it was the Vietnam War. And in the spring, it was U.S. and Asia relations in the 21st century. Now, most like any teacher I've ever had going in, he was a really cool guy. He was kind of funny, and he was a younger teacher, and so he was using like references that people my age at the time were able to relate to. I mean, there was a time in the beginning when I would have told you his class was the class I was looking forward to most. But as time went on, and there was a whole bunch of other stuff going on, and I'll get into later, he really began to show his true colors. Like, for starters, this guy was one of the football coaches too, and it showed. On top of all that, this is actually, a lot of people are going to find this funny. You guys know I'm a Cowboys fan. This teacher was probably the one Eagles fan on campus. So, already that paints a bad sign. Now, before I continue on, I want to make one thing abundantly clear. When we meet people, when a person meets another person, right from the very beginning, you can pretty much dictate 3 things about them that okay, these 3 things about them I know for a fact are true. That's age, gender, and race. And other stuff about them you learn as you go on. And for many, many years, pretty much since I knew the concept of, diversity, I never judged anyone on any of those things. Not just age, gender, and race, but also, color or religious beliefs or political beliefs. Because every person has a life to live. And it's certainly not my place to take anything away from that. I mentioned political views at the very end because, listen, I really don't care about political views. I barely have any idea what's going on outside the fact that we have 2 people who are running for president who probably, for all intents and purposes, aren't qualified to run for presidency. In fact, the only reason why I am a Republican is because I think elephants are cool. Definitely cooler than donkeys. That's not an opinion, that is fact, by the way. So, if you're looking for any kind of political discussion from the likes of me, you're not going to get it. Because, for all intents and purposes, I really am an idiot. But I tell you one thing right now, this teacher was left. This teacher was so left. Oh my God. This teacher had been known to get into very heated arguments with other faculty members over politics. Heated arguments. One such teacher, who was another history teacher, but he was also my cross-country coach. And if any of you from Trinity-Pawling are watching this, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Thankfully, from what I hear though, thankfully my cross-country coach was able to put this guy in his place. Thank God. And granted, some of this teacher's rage was brought upon ourselves, really more so other students. But I'll get to that in a second. See, the way that these classes worked was there were no tests. There were no quizzes unless we brought it upon ourselves. I'll get to that in a second. This was a read and discussion class with a project or paper here and there you had to do. And, you know, if we didn't really do a good job, we had to take a quiz, which one time we had to take a quiz. I'll get to that momentarily. So, this was during the Vietnam class, so winter trimester. Now, to paint the scene for you, before we left for winter break, and I'll be talking about this much more in December, we lost one of our own to suicide. Like, with days before we had to leave for winter break. Meaning, when winter break was over, we had to go back to nothing but sadness, depression, and very, very cold. It was cold that winter, holy cow. So, a lot of us really weren't feeling it, let's say. And the one time, like, a bunch of us didn't read the material that we were supposed to read and discuss about, like, he snapped at, like, all of us. And to all my teacher friends, be very wary. What I'm about to tell you is going to be will make you viscerally ill. I forget what I said to make him do this. All I remember was he was saying, Cutler, shut up. You started great in the beginning of the year, and now all you say is stupid shit. Now, keep in mind, I was a person who, for all intents and purposes, had only just stopped committing suicide. I was going through life not knowing what to do. Going through the motions, let's say. But I was viscerally aware of the fact that my parents spent upwards to $50,000 for me to be there. And to have this liberal douchebag cuss me out in front of everyone. I'm going to let you all know right now, I didn't walk away. I stood right there and took it. To this day, I'm not entirely convinced I did the right thing. In fact, if I were to redo that whole thing all over again, I know exactly what I would say. See, again, I'm not going to name any names so as not to embarrass or offend anyone. I will tell you, though, that this guy's name, depending on how it's spelled, could be a boy's name or a girl's name, and he had a girl's name. If I could redo that whole moment all over again, I would have grabbed my stuff, walked towards the door, but before I left, I'd say, how's this for stupid shit? You have a woman's first name. And then left. The reason why I didn't, I just didn't want to get in trouble. This guy is lucky that I really was a good boy. And I didn't want to get in trouble. There was also another reason why. Now, the fact that that a bunch of us students didn't really read the material for that day, that's definitely on us. But what made matters worse for said teacher was, sadly, his father was dying. In fact, I do believe he died not long after this. Now, actually, he had died before this. He had died right before this. The man just lost his father. As much as I would have loved to just cuss this guy out, I couldn't bring myself to do that knowing that his father died. It's actually like that one teammate I had at Gettysburg College. You know, I could cuss the guy out. Hell, I could kick his ass if I wanted to. There's nothing I can do that's worse than losing a loved one. Not even remotely. So I didn't. I just stood there and took it. And I know a bunch of you guys out there are saying, you know what, Nick, you did the right thing. You were the bigger man for staying your ground, just taking that and, living to fight another day. To this day, I'm not entirely convinced that's the case. Especially when you stop and consider what happened later. Oh yeah, there's more. It was the very end of the year. And what happened was, we're along the part of the quad that's right next to the Cluett building, very big building that you see when you first get to campus. And all the seniors are lined up. And, we're pretty much shaking hands with, all the students and faculty that we met and got to know throughout the year. It's actually supposed to be a pretty good moment, all things considered. And then this teacher shows up. And he has the audacity to say, well, Cutler, I broke you down, but I built you back up again. Ooh, I should have cussed this guy out then and there. See, as I said earlier, I went into Trinity-Pawling, or actually I more alluded to this earlier, but I went to Trinity-Pawling pretty much with the intent on killing myself. Nobody was going to miss me. I was broken when I first got there. So this notion of him breaking me down, bullshit. He didn't. And then there's when he said, but I built you back up again. Alright. You built me back up again, huh? Okay. I doubt he's ever going to watch this. But let me make one thing abundantly clear. You didn't break me, I was already broken. And built me back up again? I really was going to kill myself. And the only reason why I didn't was because of a very tragic loss that we all had to suffer through that year. It was through the collective unity of all of my brothers that built me back up again. My brothers saved my life, and they built me back up again. The faculty that were supporting me, my coaches, and all the other teachers I had, who aren't you, they built me back up again. You didn't do a goddamn thing. Sorry. That just might be the most mad I've ever been doing one of these videos. I'm sorry. I mean, okay, so 5 years goes by, and it's time for my 5-year reunion. Now, I mentioned earlier there are 3 people who genuinely made me very upset just when thinking about them. One of which was including this teacher. If any of them were there, I genuinely would have considered leaving. Like Irish goodbye leaving. If you don't know what an Irish goodbye is, it's basically like, let's say you're at a party and you want to leave. You just leave. You don't say goodbye to anyone. You don't thank the host or the hostess or whoever is in charge of the party for, inviting you and having you at this party. You just leave. I never do that. In fact, you know what? The party I was just at on a Saturday night, or, Sunday, I was there. I thanked whoever was in charge of the party for having me, and I had a wonderful time. That's me. That's what I would do. I really could never find it in my heart to just straight up leave without saying goodbye. This teacher was definitely the kind of person where if he was there, forget it, I'm gone. Really and truly. But thankfully he wasn't there. In fact, in the 5 years since I graduated from Trinity-Pawling, he was long gone. I don't know where he is, nor do I care. frankly, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's not teaching anymore. But in any case, I know in December I'm going to get into talking about the worst teachers I ever had, for sure. But that really is from an objective standpoint. In all actuality, this guy was hands down the worst teacher I ever had. If any of you guys are watching this and you had this teacher, you know just as well as I do how horrible this guy was. If any of you happen to be watching this and this guy happens to be your teacher, God help you. Hopefully it's not so bad. I mean, it's been 15 years. Maybe the guy's kind of mellowed out a little. Who knows? To all my teacher friends out there, I need to know your opinion. Like, there's no way any teacher worth their weight in salt would do this. Just cuss a student out and literally sit and tell them that tell their students that all they say is stupid shit and get away with it. No way. In fact, I can think of 3 teachers I personally know who not only love to teach, but they wear that like a badge of honor. I genuinely think when they heard what I just said, in regards to what that teacher did, they're probably like sick to their stomachs right now. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. This guy was the worst teacher I ever had. But you know what? It is because of him I did learn one thing. I really and truly did. Because, before this teacher decided to become a giant dick, he actually did tell a story of how there was one teammate and classmate that he knew who was a huge visceral racist. Like, he was saying that one word that begins with the 14th letter of the alphabet, the one that ends in a hard ER, that word. And he would just use that word casually. Many years later, that guy would later work in a corrections facility. And this teacher, who I just pretty much spent the vast majority of this video justifyingly bashing, visits this guy on the job, and he notices that, that this guy, who is again a casual racist, is working with lots of people who are obviously a different race. And the guy leans over and he says, and the teacher leans over and says, hey, there's a lot of people with different races here, and you haven't been saying any, racial slurs. Like, what's the deal? And then it was the corrections guy who said, listen, at the end of the day, we all have a job to do. These guys have my back and I have theirs. So it was from that. I never had a problem with diversity or accepting others before. But it really does go to show that people have the capacity of change. And no matter what is going on, we're all on the same earth together. We all share the same blue sky, whether we all like it or not. Who knows? Maybe I'll probably run into this teacher again, and maybe we'll have a heart-to-heart. Who's to say? Although I would say the ball's in his court for sure. To this day, listen, if any teachers are watching this, I have much respect and appreciation for what you do. In fact, I don't think you get credit enough for what you do. So, if you're watching this, I need to know, how would you have handled that situation? That teacher cussed me out, what would you have done in that moment? Because there's no way I don't think anyone would have done what this guy did. I really don't. I should probably close this off. So yeah, that's the worst teacher I ever had. I mentioned that after I forgave that one person, there's 2 people left, and that teacher was one of them. And now there's 1 left. But I'll get into that next week. I hope y'all like this video. If you like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow me on social media. As always, I'm very humble in this video for all of you guys watching. Enjoy for name. Hopefully you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. And remember, if any of you guys want to talk or chat with me here to let me know you're back, take care and make good choices. 607 all day, baby. Sorry, I'm trying to think if there's anything I could have said. Oh, actually, you know what? There is one thing. This guy had a really strict no swearing policy in front of him, and he swore at me. Can you tell I really don't like hypocrites either? Okay, take care.